There are moments in history where change announces itself with noise, collapse, fire, displacement. Events that leave visible marks and are remembered because they are impossible to ignore. And then there are moments where nothing appears to break. The buildings remain. The streets continue to fill each morning. The language is still spoken in the same cadence, with the same rhythm, carrying the same meanings from one voice to another. And yet, beneath that continuity, something essential shifts. Not removed, not destroyed, but replaced. In 1928, within the borders of Turkey, a law was enacted that would alter how an entire population accessed its own past. Under the direction of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the state replaced the Arabic-derived Ottoman script with a Latin-based alphabet designed for Turkish phonetics. The law did not erase documents. It did not remove archives. The past remained in place. But the path to it changed. For generations, Ottoman Turkish had functioned as more than a written language. To read that script was to participate in a shared framework of knowledge. To write in it was to enter that framework. It was not simple, but it was stable because it was shared across generations. The reform of 1928 altered that relationship with precision. The new alphabet introduced a direct correspondence between sound and symbol, aligning written language with speech in a way the older system did not. This alignment was designed. It made reading faster to learn and easier to teach. Literacy expanded. Education systems grew. But the success of the new system carried an immediate consequence. Everything written before the reform remained in the older script. Every record, every letter, every archive entry continued to exist exactly as it had been written. Nothing changed about the documents themselves. Only the ability to read them changed. The transition was not gradual. Within months, the new alphabet appeared in newspapers, signage, and official communication. Educational institutions shifted, teachers were retrained. Adult education programs were established to teach the new system to those who had already learned to read in the older one. The expectation was not coexistence, it was replacement. And replacement carries a specific consequence. It does not remove what came before, but it moves it out of reach. A father who had learned the Ottoman script could still read the past, but his child, educated entirely in the new system, could not. The language remained shared, but written access did not. At first, the gap could be bridged. The elders could read aloud, interpret, and explain. The information remained, but the form of access changed. It was no longer direct. It moved through interpretation, and interpretation introduces variation. Details condense, nuance softens, structure shifts. Over time, this creates distance. As the generation trained in the Ottoman script declined, fewer people could read those documents fluently. What had once been common knowledge became specialized knowledge. Documents shifted from daily tools to preserved artifacts. In cities, institutions absorbed this shift. Universities and archives maintained the ability to read Ottoman Turkish, but access narrowed. In rural areas, the effect was immediate. Land deeds, letters, and records remained, but could no longer be read within the household. A document could still exist, still hold meaning, still define ownership, yet require external interpretation to access. Nothing had been destroyed, and yet something had changed. The past remained present, but no longer directly accessible. The shift did not present itself as loss. It appeared at first as expansion. More people could read, more people could write. The barrier that had once separated written language from everyday speech had been reduced, allowing words to move more easily between voice and page. This is how the reform was experienced by many encountering it for the first time. It simplified, it clarified, it opened. But systems rarely move in only one direction, and what becomes easier in one form often becomes harder in another. Printed material in the new alphabet began to spread rapidly. Newspapers transitioned. Government notices followed, school books were rewritten, and public signage across towns and cities was replaced letter by letter. A person moving through that environment would not hear a different language, but they would see one. The shapes had changed. The patterns had shifted. The written world itself had been redrawn. Because written language is encountered constantly, this change embedded itself into daily life. Reading became tied to the new system, and participation required adaptation. For younger individuals, this adaptation was immediate. They entered schools where the new alphabet was standard. There was no transition to manage, no previous system to unlearn. Their literacy developed within a single structure, internally consistent and reinforced at every stage. For them, the system was not new. It was simply the only one that existed. For those who had lived within the previous system, the experience was layered. Learning did not replace what they already knew. It had to sit beside it, often unevenly. There is a difference between learning a system for the first time and replacing one that has already been internalized. The first builds familiarity, the second requires separation. Some adapted fully, practicing until the new system became natural. Others adapted partially, recognizing letters without achieving fluency, and some remained anchored to the older system. This was not resistance in a formal sense, it was limitation, time, access, and opportunity, shaping who could fully transition and who could not. In smaller communities, the transition could remain incomplete. A person might recognize both systems without fully belonging to either, existing between structures rather than within one. This created a condition that had not existed before, a population not divided by language, but by script. Spoken language continued without interruption. Conversations remained fluid. But writing operates differently. It records, stabilizes, and preserves detail in fixed form. When access to that system changes, the relationship to recorded detail changes with it. A spoken agreement can be remembered. A written agreement can be confirmed. When confirmation shifts away from the individual and toward an external interpreter, the nature of trust begins to change. It is no longer immediate. It becomes mediated. Over time, mediation becomes normalized. People adapt. They seek assistance, rely on trained individuals, and accept that certain forms of information require translation. As adaptation settles in, the structure of access reshapes itself. Literacy remains, but its distribution changes. The ability to engage with certain forms of knowledge becomes uneven. The reform did not remove knowledge. It redistributed understanding, shifting it from common access to specialized access over time. And this redistribution defines its long-term effect. Not disappearance, but separation between those who can access the past directly and those who must rely on interpretation. By the middle of the 20th century, the effects of the reform had settled into a new equilibrium. The Latin-based alphabet defined literacy across the country. Schools, government offices, and public communication operated entirely within it, reinforcing the system through constant use. The Ottoman script had not vanished. It remained present in archives, in preserved documents, in collections held within institutions and private homes. But it no longer functioned as a living system of daily communication. Its role had changed. What had once been part of active knowledge, used, referenced, and applied, shifted into stored knowledge, requiring retrieval rather than participation. Active knowledge moves through repetition. It is reinforced by use. Stored knowledge remains in place, waiting to be accessed, but not shaping daily interaction unless it is intentionally brought forward. The Ottoman script, over time, became part of stored knowledge for most of the population. It required training, effort, and deliberate engagement to access. It no longer existed as a shared baseline. Some individuals maintained that access deliberately. Historians, linguists, archivists. For them, the script remained functional, studied, and alive within specific environments. Separation alters the relationship between existence and understanding. A document can remain fully intact while its meaning becomes dependent on mediation. Mediation reconstructs meaning, but reconstruction is not continuity. It translates, interprets, and approximates, but it does not replicate the original encounter between reader and text. Continuity moves without interruption. Reconstruction moves through layers. Each layer introduces distance, not through intention, but through transformation. The reform altered that distinction. It did not remove the past, it changed how the present could reach it. Across Central Asia, similar mechanisms unfolded through multiple script changes. where languages moved through Arabic, Latin, and Cyrillic systems within a few decades. Each transition was implemented through policy, each restructured access. A single language could exist across multiple scripts, each tied to a different generation and political structure. Documents accumulated across those systems, access fragmented. Continuity did not disappear, it segmented. Returning to Turkey, the single transition avoided multiple layers of fragmentation, but it still created a clear boundary between past and present writing systems. That boundary did not require constant enforcement. It sustained itself through use. Every new document reinforced the new system. Every generation extended its reach. The older script, lacking reinforcement, continued to recede, not through removal, but through disuse. Disuse is sufficient. Once a system is no longer required, it becomes optional. Once optional, it becomes rare. Once rare, it becomes distant. Distance, in this case, is not physical. A document can be held in one's hand and still remain inaccessible. The separation is structural, not spatial. The past did not disappear. It moved, just far enough that it could no longer be reached in the same way. And in that movement, the boundary between memory and history was quietly redrawn. Hi, Chini here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like, so you get notified when a new video drops. It's also the best way to support our channel.